All right, we are live for the third really big class for violinists. And we'll give a couple minutes before we start playing and getting to the music for people to sign on and get on the YouTube live stream. Just a little bit about today. Just when I thought I had all the technical wrinkles sorted out and dealt with, and that today would just be a breeze, today we are dealing with sync problems. So apologies in advance if those of you on the Zoom meeting find the videos that we're going to screen share to be vastly out of sync. Some people are having problems, some people aren't. So apologies for that. We tried to sort it out and ran out of time. About the really big class. Obviously, this is come into being because we are suddenly all at home with time on our hands, trying to find a way to be productive and relevant and inspired and involved with each other as musicians. The idea first came out. It's actually something I've wanted to do for a really long time, and I apologize to those of you who have been on the past classes. You've heard this story already. But when I was a kid, I grew up in a smallish town in the mountains in the western United States, and my mom put together a Saturday morning masterclass series for young musicians. And she just did this because she thought we all needed more opportunities to play. And the memories of those masterclasses are some really of my most treasured memories as a young violinist. I got to play for amazing musicians who I never would have come across otherwise. Then when I was in university at conservatory, my violin teacher had a weekly class. It happened to be on Thursdays in the afternoon, and those classes were just an absolute feast for the ears because people would come in and play Isaiah Ballade, or I remember hearing the Kreutzer Sonata for the first time in one of those classes, and you know, your jaw would be on the floor as a freshman trying to figure out how people were playing this stuff. And again, some of the most inspiring moments of my university time were in those classes. So I'd wanted to put together a masterclass series, but never had opportunities. So I found that here in Zoom and with this network of people that I've met across a long time performing and playing with different people. So that's the really big class. We just have a couple rules. It's pretty simple. Those of us on Zoom, it's easiest if you keep your audio and video off unless you're playing, obviously. And we have a little bit of control on that on our end. So don't be offended if your video disappears or you get muted. There'll be time for questions at the end, so please use the raise hand feature to ask questions, and maybe a little bit between performers as well. What else did I want to say? That's all about just the procedure of the class. Helena Wood. I wanted to tell you a little bit about her. I met her at a gig, and one of the real delights of being a freelancer, especially when you're new to a town like I am to London, is that you never know what the gig is really going to be like. You don't know who you'll be sitting with. Even if you know what the music is, you might not have played it before. In my case, I've never played it before. And it can really, your experience really depends on who the people are. And I showed up at a gig, random gig at St. Martin's, and sat down. And it was one of those where a string quartet is doing the job of a much larger band. And that can be a little bit stressy. And Helena was leading, and I think I was probably the only second violinist, maybe. And it was just easy and beautiful. And she had this sort of grace and ease with leading the group that just brought it together. And it was fantastic. And I've stayed in touch with her actually on Facebook primarily. We've bumped into each other a few other times. But the amazing thing about Facebook is that you learn things like she has this amazing whippet named Joey. And once I saw that she had a whippet named Joey and that she was training this dog to do all the things that I train my dogs to do, I was like, yeah, she's good. We got to keep her around. So I hope Joey had a good day and a good walk in a field somewhere. My dogs did not get walked. They are cooped up and unhappy, but it'll happen tomorrow.
Oh,
So that's Helena. This class today is, again, completely different from last week. Today we're looking at orchestral excerpts, and I was so thrilled when she said that that was kind of what she wanted to do because I was going to ask, but I was, hoping that that would be an offer, and it was. Um, Orchestral excerpts are certainly not my specialty. I've had to start learning them. My students are learning them, and it's just great that you're going to share your expertise with us. I think we'll just go straight into this. We're going to start with Will. And Helena, which video should we share with Will?
why don't we start with the Schumann, if that's okay with Will? And so we can watch the video and then maybe just talk about a few little corners, and then we could do the Prokofiev if we have time after that. How does that sound?
That sounds good. And Will is a recent graduate of the RNCM. He's out making his way in the freelance world. He's supposed to be touring and doing side by sides and amazing things, but he's in his father's shed.
No.
All right. Video. Okay. Sorry. I don't know what's happened to the
Sorry,
video.
one second, Cecily. It is a technical problem on my end. About
Technical problem.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. Okay.
Fantastic. So do we have Will there? Is Will unmuted?
Hello.
Hi, Will. How are you doing?
I'm good,
Well
thanks.
played. Now this excerpt it's so tricky, isn't it?
It's really, really difficult. I only had to perform it once in an audition, and I didn't spend nearly enough time on it. It was years and years ago, and I just was slightly traumatized. So I've very, very recently come back to it and decided I'm gonna get it. So I've spent the last week going
Yeah.
over it and trying to really break it down. But yeah, I thought what what a better reason to bring it to a masterclass like this, to kind of find out the best way to practice it and do things.
Well, it does quite often come up.
Yeah.
And I've actually, weirdly, I'm glad you're doing this, because I've decided during this lockdown that whenever I practice, which is kind of every couple of days or something, I warm up with this.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Yeah, because it's so tricky. And they often ask it, and they don't just ask it when you're going for tutti auditions. They might do if you're going for principal jobs as well. I've had it in concertmaster auditions as well. So because it is so tricky. So I think it's quite a good warm-up exercise if you're bored of Sevchik or whatever. So that's what I've been doing. So I think, could you just play for me up to the first time bar?
Yeah.
And then stop there.
Yeah, sure. Am I all in shot so you can see everything?
Great. Fantastic. Now that time it was a much better stroke
Yeah.
than on the
Getting
recording.
into the stroke is kind of one of the most
It's tricky, right?
parts, actually. Yeah.
And it's really hard to get it to start from nowhere. Really hard. I think the thing that I notice is that make sure that your bow hold isn't actually too flexible.
Okay, yeah.
Because if it's too flexible, it's actually quite hard to control. I actually have very little flexibility in my fingers when I'm playing an excerpt like this.
Yeah.
Because I think and also to make sure that there's no tension at all in the right arm. So it's completely neutral. And that the fingers, actually, every single finger is holding the bow.
Yeah.
So it's not too flexible, because the more flexible, actually, the less control you're going to have.
Yeah.
Maybe just play a couple of bars, thinking of that.
Yeah, sure. It kind of felt a bit easier, actually.
It makes it much easier, actually. And especially think about the first finger, that it's not too relaxed, like, I'm not sure if you can see it, like that. It actually needs to make sure it's round the bow a little bit.
Am I kind of flopping it off a little
bit? Yeah, it's quite often that we just sit the first finger on. And actually, if you actually hold the bow a little bit in a passage like this, you'll have more control.
Yes, yeah.
I think a lot of people, when you're studying growing up as a child, you're told everything has to be very free and flexible, and that's lovely. But when you come to something like this, it actually makes it much harder.
Yes.
So if you have that little bit of, it's actually quite firm. You should struggle to take the finger off the bow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that already that when you played it that time compared to the recording was a really good stroke. That was fantastic. The only other thing I think in this first section, could you play me? I'm just trying to remember which bit. Can you play this bit from there, whichever bar that is, the upbeat to bar 9?
Yeah.
Just up to the first time bar again.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm going to be really picky.
Yes, no, go do it, please.
I wasn't convinced.
Yeah. It's something to do with like trying to keep my fingers low. They like flap over, and it's always a bit sharp. The E flat.
It's keeping the hand in the same position. So as you say, there's very little movement actually.
Yeah.
That it stays as close to the strings as possible.
Yeah.
I think this is one of the reasons this is also given this excerpt. It's not just the stroke, it's the accuracy of the intonation. Yeah. And the things that are tricky are and checking them. Checking them with your open strings. Those are the things that if I'm sitting on a panel and hearing this played, if it's approximate, it sounds brutal, but it will usually be
yeah.
Because someone else will come in and play it
perfect,
bang on in tune. And I don't mind if you slip. If you do a shift and you don't hit it, that's not a problem. But if generally the intonation is a little vague,
yeah,
you just don't want that in a section of 14 people playing this.
Yeah, of course.
Because it just takes away that clarity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that's the type of thing that excerpts have to be, is you can make the odd slip. That's really not a problem. And I think that's something that a lot of people worry about. Oh no, I made a mistake. Really doesn't matter. We're all human. But it's but it needs to be consistent.
Yes.
So the intonation of things like that has to be right in the middle.
Yeah.
Every single note right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's worth looking at.
Yeah.
Just those little corners. And perhaps you could go from the repeated F sharps, and then we can do this next bit, because that's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the worst bit, I think.
It's horrible.
Yeah. you want me to keep going?
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't sure whether you wanted me to
Sorry,
keep
I
going.
should have said. I have tried so many different fingerings for this.
So yeah, same. And this is
So
still
many.
not that great.
Well,
but yeah, do you have any tips?
Well, for a long time, I did exactly what you're doing. And I went, sorry, I keep peering because I've got the smallest iPad with the music on it. So I'm doing. Is that what you're doing?
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So I was doing that for a long time, and then I decided last week that it didn't work. I was like, it's not clean enough. It doesn't matter what bow stroke I use, where I play in the bow, how in tune it is, it's not clean enough. So
Yeah.
I've tuned my bow, my fingering. And I mean, every fingering is individual. You know, everyone's hands are different. So it may completely not work for you. But what I've tried recently is, so you just stay in first position,
Yeah.
well, half position. So that's half position. And then I would go up to first position to a 2, which isn't ideal, but you've got enough of a string cross to jump from a 3 to a 2. And I find it actually quite a lot cleaner.
Yeah. And the stroke sounds a lot better. It's something about the high G string.
Yeah.
It's always sounded a bit dodge. So.
And I just think as well, the thing you've got to think about is what would it sound like with 12, 14, 16 violinists? And I think that one is going to sound like that.
Yeah.
With that many people. Whereas I think if you do it across the string in the first position, it's going to be cleaner and quite near the bridge. Yeah. So it's something to think about anyway, just to try different fingerings, because it is the worst bit, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons they give it.
Yes, yeah.
How you cope with it. But otherwise, it's a really, really good stroke. I think the only other thing was things like this bit. Do you have letter or bar 35?
Yes, yeah.
Things like that bit. Those intervals again.
Yes, yeah. I shift down onto that C, and I always find you hear the shift quite a lot. Do you stay in position there?
Play me what you do.
So I go from a 1 on the E flat to a 2, which is a bit weird.
I do that. I think.
Oh, okay.
I just go down to first position there.
On the A?
Yeah. And then I stay up, obviously.
Yeah, I think I'm just being lazy and trying to keep the same hand shape like this every time. I tried slowing down this video of Chamber Orchestra of Europe doing it to try and zoom in on their fingerings. And it kind of worked a little bit. It kind of almost worked, but yeah, I should definitely just try and make that cleaner and more clarity.
I think the thing is with the shifting when you're at this speed, is actually not to shift your left hand too early, because if you shift your left hand before the bow, you'll hear it. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. If you shift your left hand at exactly the same time that you play your right bow, then you'll be cleaner. So I think in passages like this, it's always think hands together when you're shifting. There are other times when you'll need to shift left hand first. But in this one, I think hands at the same time makes it cleaner. And especially when you have to jump on that one.
Yes.
Because you don't want to hear. It's never going to be good. And that's the one which is shift at the same time.
Yeah.
You don't hear it. That's kind of, I think that helps a little bit.
Yeah.
So Cecily, do we have time to do the other one, or should we? Yeah. Okay. So shall we hear the recording of your Prokofiev?
Yes.
Great. beautiful playing. It's really lovely. Now, this is another one that's kind of like, why are they asking it? It's a funny one, isn't it? I think it has to be very pure and very neat and clean, but I think actually musicality is something that they're probably going to be wanting to hear how you play this musically. And I think a lot of people will go into the audition and they'll play this very accurately.
Yeah.
And they'll forget that actually it's an incredibly beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
And when you've heard, I remember when I was at English National Opera, we had a tutti job going there, and we had 250 applicants. And so we cut that down to 60 auditions. And hearing something like that 60 times, you need to make it you.
Yeah.
And I think when you're playing something like this, it was very in tune and it was very rhythmic. And it could well be Zoom and computers that I'm losing it a little bit. But I think it's the beauty that I need.
Yeah.
That kind of, that delicate vibrato that you have in this kind of, because although it's quite classical, it is still Prokofiev. So I think if it's too white, there's something slightly missing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just try the first 5 bars and just think about your vibrato and the exact sound that you want to create.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
beautiful. It makes a lot of difference. Now, there's one note that nobody ever does any vibrato on, and that's bar 3, the last note of the bar.
Oh, yeah.
And so it goes, which is such a shame. Makes all the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I would practice it, because you've obviously got all the notes and everything in the right place, is I would practice this as musically as you possibly can with absolutely no vibrato.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, but and then add the vibrato, because then you're really aware of how much you're using, how wide it is, how narrow it is, and exactly which notes you need it on. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you get these white notes, usually a first finger or possibly a fourth finger, and then you get these with quite a lot.
Yeah.
The ones that are quite comfortable to play, then they get a lot of vibrato. And I think this passage, every single one needs a tiny bit. Because if you have none, that might be okay in a section. That's probably preferable. But in an audition, that just sounds bland.
Yeah.
So it needs to have that little, just a little shimmer. I don't know what finger I'm doing. But yeah, just that tiny little shimmer of vibrato on every single note.
Yes, yeah.
So that the phrase has such a long line that it can't possibly die.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, in something like this, I think that's what panels are looking for. They want to be able to sit back and go, oh, that's just glorious.
Yeah.
And hear the sunshine and hear those long lines. Because they're going to hear lots of people playing it very well, accurately.
Do you? That's one of the things I wanted to ask at the end of the Q&A, but I'll just quickly ask it now. So when you're sitting on the panel, like as the auditionee, do you need to kind of choose your moments to be like, yes, I can be that player that's really contributing to this section, but just playing everything really well, but also like have that something else that is like, yeah, we want to play with them. They would be a good team member to have, sort of thing. It's really like the Schumann, I think it's very much like play it right. That's great. Yeah, tick. Well done. You can play that stroke.
Exactly.
In tune. And then this sort of thing, it's like I would like when I recorded this, I was like, just get it right. That was kind of what my main thoughts were. But like, if I was going to play this on my own, obviously I'd play it really like so differently. So it's like finding that different mentality for each place. Different orchestras will look for different things, and different panel members. It's just
they will, and I think there's something to remember always with auditions is that you will never, ever, ever be able to please everybody.
Yeah, of course.
So it doesn't matter if you go in and you play like the most incredible violinists that have ever set foot on this planet. Not everyone's going to like it. So it does. So at the end of the day, you might still come away and go, no, you didn't get the job, or no, you didn't get the trial, despite the fact that you have played magically, because it's not to someone's taste.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that learn the excerpts to the absolute accuracy that you possibly can, and then add the magic, add the music and the magic on top of that. But practice that as well. Don't just practice it all accurately, because then when you get into the audition, probably nerves will get in the way and creating music becomes harder. So I'd say make sure that you're practicing practice everything accurately, then practice with all the music on top, and then perform it to as many people as you possibly can to make yourself nervous.
Yeah.
And then go and do the audition, and you've got to be you. You have to show your musicality. Absolutely. I mean, the only thing I wouldn't do is pull around tempi and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can, concertos do what you like. That's what the concerto is for, to show yourself off, your individuality. Excerpts, you do have to be pretty controlled, but you can I still think now of certain people I've heard doing auditions, and they were very rarely the most accurate. They're usually the most musical. And I'll come away going, oh, I really want to work with that person. I want that person in my section. You know, that would be so exciting to have a musician like that.
Yeah.
So
that's really reassuring.
Definitely. Those are the things that are exciting. So to be honest, you've got it all there. It's just a little icing.
Yeah. I can definitely add that for sure.
Yeah. And keep it slow cooking. Warm up with your Schumann too.
Yeah, I'm going to need it.
And you'll be great. Thank you so much for playing.
Thank you so much for the advice, and thanks for the opportunity, Cecily, and thanks everyone. Thanks.
Been fantastic. Well played.
That's amazing advice, and a couple things that you just said really hit me. One was play it to as many people as you can, and I think this evening or afternoon, whatever it is, morning for some of us, it's a really great example of that, because the 4 people playing are at different stages of your careers, and still like the need to come back and play these things for as many people as you can. Well, it never goes away. You just doing that over and over. And then the other thing you said, which I would maybe put slightly differently, but I think I'm saying the same thing, is that you have to be happy with how you're representing yourself to a panel, or to an audience, or to anyone. You have to have that sort of feeling of how you're representing yourself, and feel good about that. And if people don't like it, not everyone's going to like it.
Yeah.
So well played. Absolutely. I think we are going to move on to Lynn Kuo, who has a couple of opera excerpts for us, actually. Different field, same genre. Lynn approached me, I think, on Facebook and asked if she could play. And it turns out, we were chatting this afternoon, we know tons of people in common, which isn't that surprising, because the music world is teeny tiny. But it just goes to show how building your network, how important it is, because you never know when you're going to run across people, and in what capacity, and how you can help each other and be a part of each other's musical world. So that's pretty cool. Lynn is from Canada. She's in Newfoundland. She's, I believe, plays with the ballet. Is that what you wrote to me? I don't have my paper in front of me.
Yeah, that's right. National Ballet of Canada in Toronto.
Yeah. And is preparing for an audition and wanted to do this today. Mark, you've got videos queued up. Helena, what would you like to hear first?
Should we start with the Mozart? Is that okay, Lynn?
Sure.
All right.
You're playing a video, or am I playing it live?
We'll play the video.
Okay.
To stay consistent. Thank you.
fabulous. Oh my gosh, I love this piece. It's so exciting, you can't help but smile.
Helena, I swear I did not lengthen that last D, and both times it sounded so long.
Oh, really?
It sounded like I played a whole quarter or a half note, but I swear I don't do that long on the video playback. It's so long. I swear I don't do that.
It's probably the reverberation on the recording.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's really superb playing. I mean, it's so clean. It's so impressive.
I would love to ask you actually. I did so many takes of that. You have no idea. I feel like in an audition when I'm nervous, I feel like my left hand is not even, and it's just barely even. Okay. I've practiced it separate bows, and I've practiced it in different bowing combinations, like things like that. Things like that. Do you have any tips for me? I wonder if it's too much tension that I'm holding. Like this is.
I was going to say how much. The problem in an audition is quite a lot of the time you get very little warm-up time, right?
Exactly.
You get about 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something, which, to be quite honest, is not enough time to really warm up the muscles, because what I suspect is that the muscle here, your thumb muscle,
yes,
is too tense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The reason I think that is because I have exactly the same thing when I do a performance. So if I'm playing a concerto or something, I'll get real fatigue, and then your fingers aren't falling naturally, and they're not falling evenly. And I think it's because that muscle is too tense. So if there's a way of warming up that muscle, probably, have you seen those Chinese balls that when you put balls in your hand and you twist them?
Yeah.
I think that's quite a good way of warming up your hands before you actually practice.
I see.
Because, I mean, it's fine if you've got 45 minutes to warm up, because then your muscles are warm and then less chance of having that uneven feeling. But I think if you haven't got the time, try and warm your hands up before you pick up the fiddle.
So mobilizing my thumb.
I think that's probably because, yes, the evenness is a real thing, isn't it? If you're cold, I also think psychologically, if you think of your hand in one position, and you think of, I wonder if I move my hand that way, that might make it simpler to see, and you drop the fingers onto the fingerboard, as opposed to hitting them down or putting them down, you literally have your hand in one position and you drop the fingers. I think it makes it easier to control them and a lot more relaxed. So your hand stays in exactly the same position, no matter where you're shifting, and you just drop the fingers down.
Do you mean to say the shape of the shape
Yeah.
of the shape of the fingers? Okay.
Exactly. So the shape of your hand.
Okay.
Are you on the G string now? Yeah.
Yeah, I do that in first position. Oh, I never thought of third position.
I tell you what I find really difficult is 4-3-4-3.
Yeah, me too.
Because no matter how strong your fourth finger, it's never as strong as your 2 and 1, which is why I do it here. Because it's going to be stronger there than there, because that is really hard to do a fourth finger.
And then now this one is not in tune, I feel. Yeah, I know that 4 and 3 is not even. I can hear it.
So I think it's hard to see on a computer, but I think you have probably quite long fingers. Am I right?
Not really. I think I have a very short fourth finger.
So what I'm seeing when you're playing is your hand, when you're playing on the G string, which is what most people do, is you bring your elbow quite far round in order to reach the fourth finger. So when you do that, if your elbow is quite far this way, you're very on top of the string, and you have actually much less control.
Less control?
Yeah, you have less control. So if you move the elbow back to a gravity completely right in the middle, not that far under and not that way, just right in the middle, and you drop your fingers down. So you're actually less on top. Your fingers are slightly flatter.
I see.
You'll have much more control. You see, as soon as you put the bow on the string, you moved your elbow.
Did I? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
There you go.
Oh, it feels weird. I feel like I can't reach my fourth finger.
I bet you will be able to.
Okay.
It's more even. Yeah.
Does that sound any better? I don't know if it does.
I think it does. And I think also the other thing that we often don't think about is the exact note that we're going to cross strings on.
Okay. Okay, but so in this new, I'm using new fingering, obviously.
Yeah. Now play it in the first position like you did before. You see, I lose a few of the notes.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like this one, that one's uneven.
Are you crossing? Hang on. I think you're crossing strings a quaver too early, which is why you're losing that fourth finger.
In the third position?
Yeah. If you already start crossing the string, you lose it. Then cross. Yes. Perfect. Okay, now completely and utterly forget about the technique and think all the way to the end of that phrase.
Am I at a good angle? Okay.
No, you're great.
Oh, wrong fingering, sorry.
Fantastic. But I'm finding that you're ending the phrase after the first two bars. And it's actually one long, and especially as pretty much every member of the orchestra is playing it.
Yes, okay.
And always the best person to listen to is the bassoon. Because
Okay.
bassoonists play this so beautifully, and for some reason. So you just follow the line of the bassoon, and they always play this lovely long line.
Okay. Oh, wrong fingering again.
Okay. When you're in your own time, the other thing to do, which is a bit of a, it's a strange practice thing, but I get a duster. You know what I mean? Like a cloth.
A cloth?
Or something. And you put it on the end of your violin, and you put the end of your violin against the wall. So then I'll show you. So I get a little cloth like this, and I put that against a wall. I'll use a music stand. Like that. There we go.
Okay.
And then you play it. Because what's happening is when you're trying to be musical, you're moving.
Okay.
And when you physically move, your bow has to find your violin. I'm exaggerating, of course, but if you move to be musical, it makes it technically much, much harder.
Got it. Okay.
So if you keep your scroll exactly in one place and then have all the musicality, but without moving, that'll make it physically a lot easier to play. Yeah, it's already much, much smoother.
Okay.
I wonder whether it might work a little bit higher in the bow. Because the you don't really want to hear the bow changes too much. Yes, because it needs to kind of whisper a little bit like this. Because if it's actually too clean, if you have that many people in an orchestra playing it really clean, it's actually just too present. Almost needs to whisper, because then the next entry that you did, which was absolutely superb, then you really have the power at that point. The difference needs to be vast, because this is the beginning. This is the first thing that anybody in the audience hears.
Mm-hmm.
The chances are the audience is still talking and ignoring the musicians. But that's the bit that you have to make everybody sit up.
Yeah.
Right, shut up and listen to us now. That kind of.
I have a question. Did you think that I didn't vibrate enough on that octave D? I'm wondering, because I sometimes I don't enjoy the sound that I get, so I wondered if that was too bald of a sound. Do I need to vibrate more? That's my question.
I don't think. No.
Okay.
Because too many people doing too wide a vibrato on an octave, not good.
Yeah.
I think within a section, I think it's good to have a nice narrow, subtle, especially in Mozart.
I get very self-conscious about my sound because, especially when I do an audition or I'm nervous, my sound gets skinnier and I don't like it. I always envy people with round vibratos, round sounds, so that's why I ask.
Well, I think, to be honest, with Mozart, you're probably onto a winner then, because you don't want too wide a vibrato or too rich a sound. You want it to be clean and delicate and sometimes, like at that point, powerful. But I think it's probably you're erring on the right side.
Okay.
I would say, with the vibrato, especially in an orchestral setting.
Okay.
Now I'm just trying to think. Can you just play do you have bar numbers?
Yep.
96?
Yep.
Would you just play that phrase up to the F natural? So, I'm feeling like you're backing away before you get to the F sharp.
Okay. Yeah, I think I hear that too.
And that F sharp needs a little bit of love.
Oh, yeah.
So if you play it without the E, so you just stop on the F sharp. So that's the one that we're going towards.
Sorry?
Yeah. And then you add the E, because it's F sharp. Quite often when we play a phrase like that, we don't notice the tone quality of the most important note.
The F sharp?
Not the last one. Do you see what I mean? So add the E now, but always listen for the F sharp. And now do it without moving.
Oh.
So much more beautiful. It feels very unnatural, I'm sure, but it's actually
It does feel unnatural. I'm a mover for sure. Okay, I will
We all are.
my body.
We all are. So, Cecily, do we have time to look at the other excerpt? Oh,
Yeah, we absolutely do. We have plenty of time.
fantastic. So shall we hear the Verdi that Lynn has recorded? This is superb. I mean, if I wanted to hear someone play an excerpt and give them a trial, yeah. The intonation is really superb, and it's very rhythmic. The only thing that I would suggest is the character. Maybe the forte could be a little bit more playful, and then when you get the fortissimo, it could be much more dramatic. And you have to think opera, very operatic. Imagine that you're a singer and you are very over the top.
Okay.
This
excerpt scares me because of the bow. I feel like the mix of slur, separate slur, and then doing it off the string, it freaks me out a little bit. So I'll try my best. I'll do it.
You'd never know. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Well, you wouldn't know that you're finding that.
It feels very shaky.
So which different ways have you practiced it?
Well, this is brand new to me, so I only started learning it, I don't know, a week or two ago. So I tried to practice it, like I started off with a preliminary Kreutzer 8 warm-up.
Yeah.
Because this feels the same, but then Kreutzer is quite light, and this one is. So if I play it that way, I can execute it light, but it says forte. So then I start trying to play it on the string, but then I can't really play it. And then I do trying to feel the string crossings with open strings. Yeah, and I try to do it that way.
That's excellent. That way I do as well, quite a lot, the open string.
Yeah, I rely on that quite a bit.
I think the way that I would look at that and say, right, it's a sea of quavers. So I can be quite methodical about how I practice this. And I would practice, first of all, I would do it all slurred.
All slurred.
Loops to a slur.
Or 4?
Say again?
And it's slurring how many notes? In
4 notes.
4?
So,
okay. And
that way.
As well as the
opening? The whole thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So 4 notes, and I would do it, and then try and do it up to speed. So with a metronome, doing 4 notes to a bow. The next one I would do is 2 notes to a bow. And the same thing, trying to do it up to speed. And then I would do, you've got 2 slurred, I would do the opposite of what it is. So
yes.
2 separate 2 slurred. So, oh, my brain hurts. No, other way around. That way.
Yes, that makes sense too, yeah.
So do it completely the opposite. And then I think I would also do the one where you slur the middle 2 quavers. And see if you can do it up to speed. And then I would do the entire thing starting on the wrong bow. Starting on an up bow. And by the time you've done that, when you come to do it straight, it will be so easy.
Okay, yeah.
So actually, just
I'm sorry?
If you warm up like that as well just before an audition, you make yourself play it the hardest way possible. When you then come to the audition, it's so easy.
Are you saying right before you step out into the audition room, or in your practice process?
Maybe like that morning or something, you know?
Oh, really? Okay.
Practice it upside down.
Okay. Do you do that
so
for
when you go in there, it's so easy.
Do you do that for even, let's say, Schumann Scherzo? Backwards?
That one I've definitely practiced every bowing in the entire world.
Backwards, wow. Okay.
Everything backwards, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Yeah, every single one. And then all backwards, upside down, inside out. 3 and 1. Because also it's very good for your right arm string crossing. Because if you are doing all those different, your right arm has to know which string it's on in order for it to be clean. And if you notice you're skitting over any notes, then you have to go back and do it slower and work out why your right arm is not on the right string. And I think that definitely helps with things like this, and especially things like Mozart 39 and things like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So then when you're doing that, you're doing all the different bowings, and your arm knows exactly, even if the only difference is like a centimeter,
Yeah.
which string it's on.
Yes, that's true.
It makes a huge difference. So I think that's the only thing that I would, but I mean, if you've only just been looking at that, you've got no problems. It's fantastic.
Is it
Yeah.
too slow? I don't know this opera. Is it
No.
too, it's not too slow. Okay. Because
That's the other thing I would do is play along to a lot of different recordings.
now that's another question I have, because in an audition, I'm sorry, on recordings, tempos are usually quite fast because you have a cushion of an entire section. But
Yeah.
when you play it in an audition room, it sounds frantic. So I was studying with Nathan Cole, and I kept playing a bunch of excerpts: Mozart 39, Schumann Scherzo, Don Juan, and he kept telling me play it much slower than I would actually prepare. So
Oh, really?
for an audition room, that's why I'm thinking, is this tempo too slow? Because this, I know I'm playing it at about 116, and recording goes Berlin Phil with Claudio Abbado is at 133. And
Yeah.
that's like, it's Speedy Gonzalez fast. I don't think it would sound good in an audition room.
The way that what I would be aware of is that every orchestra is different, and you may get, it's not unheard of to get someone on the panel asking you to play it faster.
Okay.
Or asking you to play it slower. So you do have to have the control and the ability to know that you can do both.
Yeah.
So the way I've been practicing recently, my downfall is always that I practice everything very slowly and very accurately. And then when I come to play everything faster, I don't practice it up to speed enough. So recently in my lockdown, my new practice regime is to practice everything too fast, but it still has to be absolutely spot on. So I'm practicing Schumann 2 way over the tempo marking that I've got, so that when I then bring it back, it might not be perfect when it's too fast, but when I then bring it back, it's much more controlled and it's less of a shock.
Okay. I wonder too if I practice it too fast in the audition room, it will be 10% faster, which would be off the charts too fast.
It depends on the individual. Yes, some people
Yeah.
do play faster when they're nervous.
Yeah.
That you do have to bear that in mind. Yeah. And I think that a lot of that you have to do is just before you go in is the breathing, is thinking about your breath and your breathing and making sure that you can keep your heart rate as low as possible.
Yeah.
You know that sport where they have to do skiing and then they have to lie on the floor and shoot?
Oh gosh.
Have you ever seen that?
I think.
Well, they actually have to learn how to drop their heart rates. So they ski, they do these ski jumps. It's completely ridiculous. And then they have to throw themselves on the floor and shoot a target. And they have to learn how to lower their heart rate so that they can do it accurately. And I think it's the same. We have to learn how to lower our heart rates before we go in.
I spent 10 hours of coaching with Dr. Don Green. Yeah, so we did a lot of work. It's hard in an audition room. Like, the best I can do in an audition room is take it down that much. And I asked him about that, and he said, "Yep, that's all you can do. If your heart is pounding, if you get to pound just a tad slower, then you're already won, I guess." Exactly. So I don't take beta blockers in auditions. I debate about that, but I've been told not to. I've been advised not to, and so I don't. So
it's very individual whether people take them or not. But I think it's trying to. You're right. If you can just bring the heart rate down that little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you don't want to completely lose it, because at the end of the day, that's adrenaline and that's performance.
Yeah.
And we want you to be performing in an audition. And also, if you've got any type of human panel, they will also know that nerves play a part. And it's not in the slightest bit natural to be doing an orchestral audition. There's nothing natural about it whatsoever.
Nope.
Let's play that little bit of Don Juan on my own, because I'm stand on a concert platform and do that, aren't I? It's so weird. Yeah, it makes no sense. So hopefully you'll have a panel who are human and empathetic. But yeah, I think practice everything slowly, fast as well. But as you say, if you tend to be quite nervous, bring that speed down a little bit when you go into the audition if you can. Yeah.
Okay. So you go past the ideal tempo as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so that you know when you bring it back, you've got complete control.
Okay. That's true. Okay. But don't practice too slowly that it's out of context, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think, unfortunately, we need to move on.
Okay.
Thank you so
so
much.
Thank you so much, Cecily.
Sounds so beautiful, Lynn, and good luck. I hope that the audition doesn't get canceled and that it goes forward. And that
Oh, good
Thank
point.
you. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Cecily.
And I really loved what you're saying about practicing all these different ways. My students who are on this meeting here, they'll all be chuckling to themselves because I'm constantly saying, do it a different way, do it a different way. You know, what other way can you think of doing it? And I've never done those particular bowing patterns, so you can be sure that that'll be happening in my next practice. But as many ways as you can think of to challenge the brain, so that the hands can just do their thing. It's great. I believe it is 8 o'clock, which for those of us in the UK is the clapping hour. So if you want to go out on your porches and clap, do so. I'm just going to clap like this, and be symbolic here.
I like it.
I hope your neighborhoods are going wild. Last week ours set off fireworks, but I know it's a little nuts. It's light out though, so I don't think they will tonight. Next up, we have one of my students at the Royal Northern College of Music, Charis Sykesud. She is in the middle of a module called, is it called Professional Development? Is that right? Are you there? Yeah. Are you unmuted?
Yes.
I can't hear you. Yes, she's there. Great. And this course is supposed to be giving a taste of what preparing for orchestral auditions might be like. And they were given this absolutely nasty booklet of excerpts to learn. And she's chosen two of them today. One is the opening of Ein Heldenleben, and the other is was it the first movement of Prokofiev Classical Symphony or the last? First. So what would you like to hear first?
Let's start with a Prokofiev, shall we?
Brilliant.
Okay. Fantastic. That's such great playing. I love this piece.
Yes.
It's so much fun to play. Have you ever played it in the orchestra?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh, it's so fun when you do get to it's. I mean, it's so difficult technically, but it's so much fun to play.
Yeah.
So, would you like to just play the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars? Lovely, really musical. It's absolutely lovely. Now, the only suggestions I would have, bar 2, with this crescendo, I would play slightly closer to the heel.
Okay.
So you've got, and then if you can end up somewhere here.
Okay.
Because if you're here, it's very hard to control, yeah? And maybe give a little bit of an accent on the, because if you notice, the D doesn't have the double.
Yeah.
So maybe a little accent on the D.
Okay.
So were you doing a down bow on the top? I can't remember.
I should have been doing it up. I think I did.
Okay. I've got a down bow written in front of me, which makes 0 sense. So it must just be the addition I'm looking at. Yeah, so perhaps just try literally the first 2 bars and just try the double notes a little bit lower in the bow.
Okay. Okay. Yes, it makes sense.
You get a little bit more control, right?
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of the zoom delay thing.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit odd watching you because I suddenly realized that you were at the heel, but just not at the same time as what I was hearing. But that, yeah, that bit needs to still be loud as well. And then if you can do the first 2 with very little bow. So. And then you get, maybe just try it a little bit slower.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Not
So you
bad, yeah.
take control.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next thing I would think about is just the exact. I would, when I'm practicing that kind of thing, I'd put in the notes in between.
Yeah.
Just for intonation's sake, do you know what I mean? So that you've got a really
If it's a
solid arpeggio.
Okay.
Yeah. That. But then when you did your recording, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Good.
Intonation was really good.
Cool.
Do you want to try the next phrase from the 5s? That bit. Great, that's really beautiful. The only thing I would make sure is that I'm sure you've practiced this with a metronome. Because it's very tempting to do the first 2 bars. I'm exaggerating, obviously. And then, because it's a nice tune, but it has to be absolutely metronomic. That's the thing about this classical symphony. There's very little space for rubato.
Yes. Okay.
Which is why it's so tricky.
Yeah.
Technically as well. To jump, because he jumps from different characters so quickly within literally beats, but you have to do it absolutely within. So make sure that, and things like the lines on the B and the F sharp, make sure that those notes are exactly a crotchet long. That one and that one. Because those are the type of things that the panel will look at. This is why they give this one. You want to know the exact note lengths.
Yes.
And exact dynamics.
Okay.
Maybe try from letter A.
I haven't got letters, I've got numbers. Is that?
Oh, sorry. That's the next big chord.
Yeah.
That one.
Okay.
So those two notes, I would do those short. And remember, you've got a line on the E.
Yes.
With a crescendo. So when I would practice this excerpt, I would probably do it with a metronome, all under tempo with every single articulation.
Yeah.
So that you don't miss any of them. So you're kind of, the speed I do. And things like that last note really needs love and care. It doesn't want to be louder than the others, but also it doesn't need to be forgotten.
Yes. Okay.
Little things like that. And then short. Those you would usually, yeah.
Okay.
So maybe play the same phrase and then carry on. Great, so let's go up to there. Now, the only thing I'd say is it's very musical, but again, you sometimes losing tempo a little. So even though you have the diminuendo, it needs to stay exactly within the pulse. Now, it's tricky because I can hear you so beautifully, but I can't see where you're playing things on the bow. But this sounds very lovely and clean. But I would make sure the last note needs to be beautiful, but not longer.
Yes. Okay.
Just try that for me, because it's a tricky one. And now do it without moving physically.
Yeah.
Oh, so much easier. Isn't it so much simpler when we don't move? And I know you know, I'm my worst enemy. I do the same thing. But this is a classic one of those pieces that you just need to be absolutely rock solid.
Yes.
And don't move. And the tricky thing is in an audition as well, you're kind of expected to stand up to play your excerpts.
When you be
You're never going to stand up in an orchestra, are you? Well, possibly if it's a chamber orchestra, you might. But most of the time you're going to be sitting, which is much easier to be kind of solid, don't move unnecessarily, you know. Whereas when you stand, it's much more soloistic feel to it. So it's trying to get the balance right. I mean, I have to say, between you and me, I sit down for my excerpts in auditions.
Right.
It's not usual, and most people don't, but I'm never going to play an orchestral anything standing up. So I play my solos, and then I say, I'll be sitting down now for the excerpts.
Okay.
And nobody's ever told me that that's not acceptable. Because if I'm doing an audition and I have to play things like all the huge solos in Heldenleben, and I will always be playing those sitting down. So that's, but you do what's comfortable. But it's just bear in mind, it's worth thinking about how much you move.
If you were sitting down. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you're then performing standing up, you have to be able to create the same kind of stability, I suppose is the word, so that your technique isn't rocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I try to practice standing up and sitting down.
Okay.
So that you've got best of both worlds. You get used to doing both. Let's jump to the funny grace note bit. My favorite bit. Great. So I'm hearing in the second bar, when you jump from the E, top E down to the bottom E, I'm hearing you avoiding the open A string.
Okay, so there's a gap.
So what I'm hearing is.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? There's a slight dum dum, and I think if you do the string crossing quick enough without moving, you won't hit the A string. You'd be amazed without moving how quickly your right arm can do a string crossing and not hit the other ones.
Okay.
Just try it. Now, I can't tell because of the video, but what bowing are you doing in this section?
So 2 ups on those 2.
Yeah.
Down on the grace note, but up on the downbeat. And then down on that second beat. And then the same after that.
Okay. Because I'm just trying to think. Now, it's individual, and also every orchestra will do different bowings. But the way I do it, and I find it easiest to be clean, is to go down, down, and then up, down, up, and then as it comes, basically. I find the shift on an up, for some reason, trying to do it on a down feels backwards.
Yes. Okay.
And trying to do 2 bows is too fussy or something. I find that just try it. I mean, it's an individual thing, but
that is easier.
yeah.
If
something feels tricky, change it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm always the same with bowings as well. You know, it's like I mean with fingerings when it's like this just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I've played this piece for years. Well, change it. there's usually a solution to every issue, I think. Yeah. So I think that one is slightly simpler, and then you're here already. Or now it can be played either way.
Okay, good. Okay.
So you can either play it on the string or, but that has to be very controlled.
Okay.
But either way is kind of acceptable, I think.
Good.
I think with this excerpt, its light and colour needs to really come out, which you're doing really well.
Good.
The dynamics and the colour changes, because it's so sparkly.
Yeah.
The piece of music is so sparkly. And the one thing I always do with excerpts when I'm preparing for an audition is to have lots of recordings on a kind of playlist. So that, because quite often if you're playing excerpts over and over again, all you're hearing is your part.
Yeah.
And your technique and your little issues with that bar and that note and that shift. And you forget the whole music and you forget all the other instruments that are playing. And quite often, if I then put a recording on and play along, I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting. This music is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to forget that. Yeah. And this especially, this is the most brilliantly exciting music to play.
Yes.
So make sure once you've done all your little finicky practice and everything that you play along or you listen.
Yeah.
You remember the excitement of how amazing the music is. Yeah. So shall we have we got time to hear a bit of the Heldenleben, Cecily?
Yeah, we do. The video she sent and the excerpt that she has it's a full 2 pages of it. Okay. Do you want us to stop it or do you want to hear the whole thing? I think it's about 3 minutes.
Why don't we stop? Do you have the music in front of you? We could stop at figure 5 or something.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me just make sure I know
the first page, because it is a long excerpt, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the second page is more of the same. So
yeah, exactly.
So we'll just play the first page of that.
Great. this is another brilliant piece.
Yeah.
It's so fantastic, isn't it? It's really good playing. I mean, your intonation is really good.
Brilliant.
Which is fantastic. The only thing I want to talk about really is sound. And again, as I was saying earlier, it might just be the Zoom quality, and the recordings, the sound's getting lost. But I wonder if we could think a little bit about the kind of sound that Strauss would have been trying to create compared to the sound of, say, the Prokofiev that we've just been doing. I think it's a completely different world.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got the kind of sparkly, light, explosive fireworks of Prokofiev. And then with this, you've just got this roaring, rich, thick powerhouse of sound. And that's what you've got to be able to create when you're playing excerpts in an audition, is the difference.
Yeah.
You need to be Jekyll and Hyde. So if they ask you those two next to each other, they need to be completely different players, totally different. And I think a lot of it is in the vibrato.
Yes, okay.
So would you try the first up to figure 1? Do you have figures?
Yeah.
So just the first few bars, and would you do that under tempo and try and think of doing vibrato on every single note, including the semiquavers. So you'll feel ridiculous at the moment, but it's just an experiment.
Yeah. Sure.
Fabulous. Now, can you do a slightly wider vibrato?
Okay.
Okay, now can you do the same width of vibrato a little bit faster?
Okay.
Okay, so what I think we need, it's really hard because unfortunately I can't see what your hand is doing.
Okay.
Which is frustrating. So I can't really comment on how you're vibrating. I can only go on the sound. And what I'm wanting is a little bit more. There's a little bit more rotating, I think. I mean, I'm slightly guessing because of the video, between these joints of the finger. And that roll will create the thicker sound. Okay. It's easier. Fourth finger is the hard one to do it on. But if you're doing it, say, on the second finger is the easiest.
Yeah.
And if your finger is rolling like this when you're vibrating, you're getting the biggest bend in pitch.
Yeah.
Which, if you then speed it up, gives you a lovely thick sound.
Okay.
It's like the opposite of what you want in kind of Mozart. So Mozart, you want a nice narrow. So this knuckle is moving only a few millimeters.
Yeah.
And when you then do the Strauss one, and also does depend whether you're playing tutti or solo. Because if you're playing, if you're doing solo, you can do that as much as you like. In a tutti, not so much, because then it's not going to be that in tune. Yeah. But this, I think you can have that kind of wider. It's really tricky because it's a fourth finger. But there, can you imagine 14, 16 violinists making that sound? Yeah. I mean, you'd just be blown out of the concert hall, which is exactly the feeling you want. So just try that first phrase and all the way up to the top third line down. And just really think of that rich, fat sound and think of those joints really rolling as you play your vibrato. It sounds fabulous. It sounds really, really great. Now, the only other thing I think you need to add to that is the bow control.
Okay.
So you don't ever want the release that you are looking for in things like Baroque music.
Yes.
You want the opposite. That note needs to keep going. And this one, keep going. So it's that three-dimensional sound.
Okay.
Don't ever give up.
Yeah.
Make sure every note has that pull.
Yeah.
And so that's got to do with where you're playing, always a little bit closer to the bridge than you might naturally feel comfortable.
Okay.
And making sure that as you come to the tip, you use the weight, natural weight of your arm. Never pressing, because that's not natural, but just there, just gravity. And then you get that lovely fat sound, you know?
Okay.
So just try again that phrase and just think of extending each note as long as possible with the sound.
Okay.
That top E flat was fantastic. It makes a huge difference when it just soars, because he even has a crescendo on it.
Yeah.
He's like, come on, don't give up. You have to keep going. But it's, yeah, it's so exciting when you can create that big fat sound, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think that excerpt, I mean, you've prepared it really, really fantastically. So it's all there technically. It just needs that different color.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But it's, yeah, fantastic playing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's really helpful.
Exciting. So, Cecily, shall we go on to hear Alice?
Yeah, we should hear Alice. And coincidentally, I met Alice in the same situation I met Helena in a random gig at St. Martin's. She was leading. I was sitting next to her. We played some Mozart divertimenti together. We had a really good time. And so here she is with canceled auditions, sadly, but lots of excerpts at her fingertips. So thank you for joining us and for agreeing to play. What should we start with?
Why don't we start with the Brahms? Is that okay, Alice?
Yeah, that's fine.
And and you're playing second violin excerpts, which
Yeah, sorry about that.
no, why be sorry? I think it's amazing. I listened to your Brahms and I was like, wait a minute, what's
Yeah, I should have probably said that. They are, yeah, they're both second violin excerpts. But
Yeah.
obviously the Brahms, anything that applies to the second part is going to correlate directly to the pretty much a lot of it up the octave. So hopefully it's useful if you're not even learning the second part.
Exactly.
So this is the opening of First Movement of Brahms 4.
Fantastic. Oh, it's really great playing. There's actually very little that I would want to change. It's one thing I really love is do you have letters or do you just have bar numbers?
I've got letters, yeah, letters and bar numbers.
So letter B towards the end of the
Yeah.
excerpt. Oh, you vibrate on every single note and I love it. It's such a good thing. But it makes that lovely fat Brahms sound, which is great. The only thing I would think about the whole thing, now obviously it's every orchestra will play it differently, but I wonder whether it could have slightly more drive.
Yeah, funny enough, I recorded it a few days ago, and since then have recorded myself again, just pushing it forward. Just it felt on listening back just a little bit too held back, especially around A, because I know that the woodwinds are kind of moving it on there anyway. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Just having that kind of momentum.
Yeah.
I think. Now, obviously, you don't have to tell me which orchestra it is, but are you using a specific part for a specific audition?
I am using, yes, their part. Funny enough, I was going to mention it in this sort of thing afterwards, that I have all my excerpts, 10 years of excerpts basically in a folder. And actually I do have the tendency that when excerpts come out, I do get my parts out because they're often annotated with some really great things. I do then cross-reference any obvious bowing. I think I've changed one bowing from what they gave me.
Right. Okay.
Just to interject, I didn't actually share Alice's part with you, Helena.
I've just got a blank one.
I gave you a clean one. Yeah.
Okay. It's just that it's a really tricky one that I don't think there is any obvious answer as to whether it's okay to change bowings. Now, obviously, if you're going it's a tricky one, because if you're going for a concertmaster, do what you like. Because at the end of the day, you can tell everybody else what to do. But otherwise, I would try to stick to theirs. But for me, the beginning of this excerpt is, I think people feel it different ways anyway, phrasing wise. But to me, it feels a little bit upside down.
Okay.
Because to me, if I was singing it, I'd be going, obviously I can't sing, but da-dum, 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 da-dum. It naturally goes down and up and down. And so it feels a bit funny to do it instead of. Do you see what I mean?
That's what you mean, yeah.
It's an individual thing, but.
That phrases much more naturally.
I think so. And it just, as soon as I saw you playing it, I was like, that's very beautiful, but it feels wonky.
Would you be brave enough to change the bowing for an audition?
Why not?
I wrote that when you were, I can't remember who we were talking, I can't remember. Anyway, I wrote in the comments in our chat, I was like, often I will change the bowing. And I've never been told, can you do it again?
Exactly. I think it's okay, because quite often I know from sitting on the panels that when you set the excerpt list, quite often you set the excerpt list and you just send it to a librarian who sends it out.
Yeah.
And they could be using an old edition, they could be using the one you played last week, but it might not be. You just don't know. And so I think if they're really, really going to be that picky, they may then say, actually, can you play the beginning the other way up? And you've got the technique to have no problem with that. But to me, it just felt slightly uncomfortable, phrasing wise. That's the only thing. And then the only other thing was the direction, the feeling of direction in this one.
I really agree with that.
And there's another small point. After letter A, when the woodwind have the tune, you've got this. That was beautiful. And the next one. Make sure that you don't ping on the top. It's still got that phrase going on. Yeah. There's another one that if you have an entire section going, it will ping out across the orchestra. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are little things that you could probably look out for. Going into letter B, I think, again, a little bit of direction. it could have a slight sense of direction, because something like Brahms is less rigid than, say, the Prokofiev classical.
Yeah, a lot of the recordings I listen to do just push it, just exactly
Yeah,
talking about.
exactly. There's just that sense of, and I think the thing is with excerpts, especially, I didn't talk about this with Lynn, but especially with opera excerpts, if you're doing something like Bohème, if you were to learn it looking at the page, it makes absolutely zero sense to how you actually play it in the orchestra, because there are huge pauses where the singer's holding a random note, and every singer in the entire universe does it, but nobody has ever written it down. And it's things like that that you kind of need to just know.
Yeah.
And that's also what they will be judging you on. Do you know that actually most conductors will move that bit forwards a little bit, or most singers will hold that note really long, so you're going to have to stretch that phrase. And things like that is definitely useful. And when you're listening on a panel and you hear lots of people, you'll know the ones that either have really listened to lots of recordings or those that have played it a lot.
Yeah.
Because you can tell. So I think it's worth, again, listening to all the other parts, playing along and making sure you get swept up in the music, because all the technique and the sound is all there. You don't need to change anything there. So it's fantastic. So maybe we should hear your other one. What is the other one? Oh, Bartok.
Yeah.
Oh, this piece is crazy.
I find, I mean, I've played it in orchestras, but I find this excerpt a bit of a scary one.
It's tricky, isn't it? And I mean, it's a completely crazy piece. I do love this bit though, it's really fun. Yeah. So shall we listen to your recording?
Oh.
Fantastic. Yeah. It's really great. I mean, it's so accurate. There's nothing that needs kind of technically changing or anything. The only thing I would consider is changing a little bit of the character. I think, for example, most of the triplets, I would do them more off the string.
Okay.
So a little bit more playful. Rather than...
Yeah, I had, on the part I was given, written on marcato. So
if you were doing it on marcato, you could, but I would still do it probably upper half-ish.
Yeah.
And I would do it still shorter. So it seems like very hard work. Which is, I would more naturally play it like that. But if they have written on, then they can try the martelé kind of approach, slightly shorter.
Oh, I can't remember my bowing, Would you play that off?
I probably would, but I would use more weight. So when I'm seeing you play, that's the kind of position, or your wrist is a little bit higher. I would actually use a slightly more, just gravity.
Yeah.
To create that thick sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe, and probably quite close to the heel. I do it, even that bit, when the first violins come in and you drop back to mezzo forte, I would still have it here. Even though you're playing it, you know, you drop the dynamic a little bit, you can still have that clarity.
Yeah.
I think looking that if your wrist is too high, actually it's quite hard to control and you're going to get a lighter sound. There's something about the upper arm here dropping a little bit that will give you a little bit more. It's not too much, because if you sit like that, that's just uncomfortable. But it's just, if the wrist is too much like this, you'll actually have a more bitey sound.
I've got written at the top of the page, drop arm.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. That's so much better, the sound. Now, the only thing is, I'm not entirely sure that your right hand knows exactly when the string crossings are. And so when you cross the string, you slightly lose the clarity that you had when you were on one string. So when you cross the strings, make sure you know the exact angle that your right arm needs to be at.
Yeah.
Now, the only other thing, going backwards a little bit, the first, I think it needs to be a little bit shorter so that it has a bit more bite, those two bars.
I can't play it now.
Okay, so the is too slow. The think of those as close as they can be.
I found it really hard.
Hang on, let me just think about this. So if you do it slowly, but that's still fast, and a kick really from the string bite on the up bow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, almost think of the grace note being on the beat, because you almost don't hear my top note, but it's an illusion that you can hear it. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you're being really mean to yourself, and you're doing the finger.
Oh, yeah. Would you shift then?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd do a third on that.
Okay. And then what about the slide then when you go? Ah.
What were you doing? What fingering were you doing?
I was doing 4 to straight away, 4, and then swapping over to a 2, 3.
Yeah.
Because I find that a more comfortable finger.
Yeah. Depends how brave you are if you can hit the F sharp on a 2. Because that's what it is.
Probably fine, but when I get into an audition, probably not so fine. So, it is possible to get. Yeah, if I practice it, I think.
Because I think I did notice when you played it through that the was too slow. The grace note with a 4th finger is slightly too lazy. Yeah.
Or better.
Or, so I'd probably end up going 3. And then on the second bar, I'd move to a 2.
Yeah, I do that, but moving from the 4 to a 2. So I could do a combination of both.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that.
I think it's a kind of creeping up thing.
Yes, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I never really thought about making life more easy for myself. I have to work at getting it closer, but
yeah, I think that would definitely make a difference. And the only other thing I would say in the whole excerpt, because the stroke we've talked about, is when you have the piano towards the end after 309, I think that could be maybe a bit more of a different, a little bit more kind of bitey, a little bit more sprightly. And then you've got the difference as soon as you hit the mezzo forte has a bit more punch.
So, yeah, I tell you why, because I've been trying to do it with a sort of more flautando stroke there.
And also, I think even though it's piano, play it closer to the bridge, you'll have much more control. Yeah. Yeah. I think then you have more bite. It's amazing how much when we play in orchestras, we end up playing further and further and further towards the fingerboard. And then I used to go to my teacher in America and he'd be like, "Where's your sound?" And I'd be like, "Sorry, it's in the orchestra pit. I've left it there. I've got no sound anymore." And he'd be like, "Close to the bridge, close to the bridge." And I have to like spend hours practicing like Ponticello. But it does, bring it, especially in an audition situation, bring everything a bit closer to the bridge.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's superb. I mean, it's so well prepared.
Oh, thanks, Helena.
It's brilliant. Well played. So Cecily, what happens now?
What happens now is we open the floor up to questions and we say a huge thank you to our performers for putting yourselves out there and playing these excerpts. It never feels good. You and you've been really game, and I hope you got a lot out of it. I know I did, and I think everyone else did as well. So questions. We can take questions from the Zoom room. If you raise your hand, if you see where that option is, I'll try to pay attention. And also on YouTube, if you have questions, put them in the chat and we can figure out if we can get them answered. So any questions or comments? I'm looking.
Simon's there.
Simon's got a question. Emily has a question. Yes, I'll unmute Emily. Hey, Emily.
Hi. I was going to ask if you think there's a difference in how you should prepare excerpts for like an opera or a ballet compared to an orchestra.
How would I do it differently? To be honest, I would prepare them in exactly the same way. The only difference would be, as I was talking to Alice just now, about how opera does differ in its use of rubato in a completely different way to symphonic music. And I think you have to pay much closer attention to that when you're doing opera excerpts, because the amount of times people come in to do opera excerpts and they play it very straight, and then you realize that actually you can't play it like that because singers will play it completely, will be pulling it around in a completely different way. So I think that's the only way that I would prepare them differently, to be honest. I think that, otherwise I'd prepare them pretty much the same.
Cool. Great question. Anyone else? Yeah, Simon, let's get you unmuted. All right. I can't seem to do it.
Oh no.
Okay, I'm failing to unmute. I hit the button and it's not happening. I'll try it one more time. Can you put it in the chat and I'll ask the question? Sorry, that should work better. Okay, anyone else? No? You guys have quite an opportunity here. My whole class from RNCM is here.
Oh, wow. Great.
Ross, you've learned these excerpts that Charis played. Did you have any questions? You know I'll call on you if you don't ask questions.
Mean teacher.
No, nice teacher. Brendan, anything? Louisa? Oh, they're being shy. Well, Ross, yes, Ross. Excellent. Hand up, unmute.
I feel like I need to speak because you've said it.
Yes.
You know how you were saying, like, change the bowens but don't change the bowens. I feel like it's such a controversial conversation to have. Like, how brave have you got to be? Like, if they like put them in red pen in your BBC and excerpt or whatever, and you're like, I just don't agree with this at all. Do you even if it's in red pen, do you just ignore it?
You know what? I don't actually think that there's a right answer, which is really annoying, right? Because you want me to tell you a definitive answer, but I don't think there is one. And I think maybe it even shows something about the individual and their personality. Because if you really, as you say, feel really strongly about something and it doesn't fit with you musically or technically or whatever, and you decide to change it, that's saying something about you. And it says that you have individuality and you have confidence and you have something to say. I don't really think that that's a bad thing. I think if you are able to do it both ways, that of course is an advantage, because if they then say, actually, could you play it the way that we've written it, then you've got a bonus on your hands. I think if you decided not to change it, that also is stating something, and it's not a negative. You're saying, see, look at me, I can do everything that you're asking me to. So I think it really is an individual thing. I have done both. I have done auditions where I've completely changed everything. And as Alice was saying, I actually I always find my parts for the excerpts I'm asked to do. And then I play from them. Okay. And if somebody specifically says, actually, can you play that in a different way, which they do in auditions, they may well ask you to play things differently, then hopefully you have the flexibility to do it. So sorry, that's not a black and white answer, is it?
No, but it's a good one. So yeah.
Yeah, Alice.
Hello, hello, fellow RNCM students. I was there quite some time ago, but hello. And well, I see that you studied with Julia. I also learnt with Julia. So hello. Well, I was just going to follow up with Helena. I mean, so yeah, I've done a fair amount of auditions. Do not be scared to just go and do as many as you can. I've been doing them for quite some time. I was just on the bowing thing. I've never been asked to do something again with a different bowing. I have been asked to do something for a different speed and perhaps playing something more in a Baroque style rather than like a vibrato taste, but never ever been asked, can you do that again for a bowing? And if you would, Helena maybe agree or not agree, but panels don't have much time, and they're probably, in my experience, not going to pull you up on one or two bowings. But maybe tempo. I have been asked to play things different tempo before. So that goes back to Helena saying playing stuff faster and slower, I think is great advice.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's great advice, yeah. Yeah, Louisa, let me get you.
Hey, I often find it hard going from one excerpt to the next, like especially during an audition. I wonder whether you have any tips, like anyone, whether you write something at the top of the page just to remind you just before you play it, or do you really think of a recording, or like get to sing it in your head before, or like all those things? Do you have anything else?
So the way that I do that is, well, there's a few ways. The way I practice it is once you've done all the background practice and you've got all the technique and everything's solid, then put all the excerpts in a hat and put yourself in an audition situation, pick them out, play them. You don't get a choice what order they're coming out. So that's one way of doing it when you have no audience, you know. So you have one shot at it as well. You can't do the whole, right, I'm going to play it straight, oh, that wasn't quite good enough, I'll do it again. No, you have one go. and then you pick the next excerpt. And the other thing is to play it to as many people as possible and put yourself in a similar situation to the one you're going to be in. So even if it's just to your cat or your dog, you're still putting yourself in a position where you're performing and possibly getting a bit anxious or nervous. So pick some friends, doesn't matter whether they play the violin or the tuba or anything, make them sit there and fire excerpts at you. And I was told by my teacher, do at least 4 playthroughs before an audition, at least. So 4 mock auditions, because then when you get to do the actual thing, it's not a shock and it's not scary. I mean, once you're actually in there, the only thing I would do is, yes, I would try and imagine that I'm in an orchestra and I've got the piece in my head. And then you just try and play the music and you forget about the technique and you forget about everything you've practiced and you are playing the music. It's all about performing, even though it's an audition. So little things will go wrong and that's totally fine, but you're performing music. That's all a panel wants to hear, I think.
Thanks.
Great. I think we're going to try to get Simon's question in here again.
Give it a go.
Hi, Simon.
H, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very, very good. That was great. It's so nice to sit and just listen for a change instead of having to dish out the advice. Just a quick question, going back to Will at the very top. He was doing 2 excerpts which would probably be quite possibly for a symphony orchestra job and for a chamber orchestra job. Do you have any thoughts about whether you would approach those slightly differently? Because I guess for me, with my experience of chamber orchestras as I have now, I'm looking for somebody who really can absolutely come with a personality and can contribute. I'm not looking for a foot soldier. I'm looking for a corporal, I guess, or a sergeant or whatever,
Yeah, I think it is a slightly different style of playing, isn't it, when you're doing chamber stuff, and you can possibly be a bit more individual. I think, to be honest, if you're going to be, I would prepare exactly the same way. Yeah. Whether it's opera, symphony, chamber orchestra, whatever it is, I'd prepare in exactly the same way. I think if you're going for it, it's like going for a principal job. If you're going for a principal job, you can be more soloistic, you can be more demonstrative in your leading and your entries, and that's probably what they're looking for. And I suppose with a chamber orchestra, you could possibly be a little bit more individual as well, in the same way. And yeah, possibly less so in a symphony orchestra, because with the symphony you do need someone to blend a bit more.
But you want that, as I said, you want somebody that you're looking for a particular piece of Lego. It could be blue, could be red, could be green. If you happen to be a green piece of Lego for today, you're going to get a trial. You might get a chance. If you're coming in and you're bright yellow, cool. Just think of it as a nice day out. Yeah.
So I think there is a slightly different approach to it.
Yeah.
In the same way that there's a different approach to the different seats that you might be going for.
Yes, I would agree. Absolutely. Having sat in some of those chairs in my previous life, I would agree totally.
I have, quite a few people coming to me wanting to step up to more principal jobs, and it's really changing the sound from tutti to solo sound, and also changing sometimes when they're playing and I'm like, okay, now you've got to lead me. I'm sitting behind you and I need to see how you're going to bring me into the section, and you have to show that when you're going for principal seats.
For sure.
So yeah, I think there is a slightly different approach. Yeah,
good. But so for the 4 people who played, brilliant. If you're all still there, I can see Alice is still there. Charis, I think, probably still there. But well done, everybody. It's nerve-wracking. Even when you're on a screen and you're in your own house and you think, well, this is my safe space. This is where I practice. Why should it be any harder? But no, it is challenging. And technically speaking, I can let a cat out of the bag now. I am a professional conductor, is what I do now. I am a chief conductor of a state chamber orchestra in Slovakia, former. I conduct the St. Petersburg Symphony, so I get to see the sharp end of what you can produce when it gets there. And it's just, so it's no different to playing just like you did now. If you can get that in your heads, just come out there and be the people that you are, because that's what we all need. You as a leader, and you want players that can join in and be part of your section. I want a section of violins that are all singing off the same hymn sheet. And you know, and I'm prepared to slot in behind a leader that they respect and that they want to work for. That's how it works for me. So yeah, but brilliant, great class, really cool. They've all been so different. They're great. Thanks, Cecily.
Thank you very much. I think we've got a question from Alex.
Hi. I really enjoyed that class. It was very, very useful. But my question is, I really struggle with short warm-up times. And I was wondering if you have any tips on how to utilize them, and like how can you make the most of them, because you don't want to just play through the excerpts over and over again because you just want to warm up and you're panicking.
Yes.
So what
I totally agree with you. And actually the last audition that I did, I really struggled with that. I think I had about 10 minutes warm up, and I had 50 pages of excerpts and 2 entire concertos, and I was like, how would you do that? And that 10 minutes also included the warm up with the pianist. I was like, okay, that's not very realistic. It's really tricky. The things that I do, I would try to physically be warmed up before. So even if I have an hour's travel, say, to the audition or whatever, I would try to be very warmed up at home or in the hotel room or wherever you are. So that I would definitely do. And then another thing is to make sure that your hands are warm, you know, fingerless gloves or whatever. All the little things that I'm sure we all have our own ways before performing, but eating a banana, drinking chamomile tea, all that stuff. And I was talking to Lynn as well about using those Chinese balls to rotate your fingers to get them this suppleness going. I think anything like that can be quite helpful. And when you get in there, I would actually warm up the way that you would warm up at home for 5 minutes. Say you have 10 minutes. I'd do that warm up for 5 minutes that you do at home so that you can feel comfortable and you can create your own space. And then I would before I got there that day, I would make sure that I've chosen a couple of excerpts to warm up with. So you choose one that you might think, I'm just going to double check those couple of bars. And then you choose the one that makes you feel the most confident and you feel most strong about, and then you warm up with that. So don't go, oh my God, I must practice that bar and that bar and that bar and that bar, because you've done all that. You've done all your preparation at home. So just stand there and go, right, you know what? I'm going to play this excerpt because it makes me feel good and strong and confident. And then the one thing I do just before I go in, if it's possible, is to play the first phrase of the concerto you're going to play a few times. Because that's the first thing you're going to do, is walk in and say, hello, panel. Delighted to see you all. Can't think of anywhere I'd rather be right now. And then you're going to play your Mozart. So I would have that Mozart and the music flowing in your mind first. But yeah, it's a totally unnatural situation. And hopefully you would always have a panel who know that.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very difficult situation that you're in under pressure. So yeah, I suppose it's just trying to find your own routine.
Yeah.
But thanks very much. Yeah, that's helpful.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I just cut her off. Finger slipped. That's amazing advice as well. I just have to throw in a very small story. I had an audition last summer where I'd made like all of the preparations I could to make it so that because it was important to me, and like I was going to get there in advance and have a nice place to stay, all this stuff. My flight was canceled. I arrived 20 minutes before the audition and had to walk in and just play. So there's something to just playing as well. Like just making yourself just, come in from a ride. You probably come in from an epic ride and pick up the violin and play, or, whatever, just to have those situations. Yeah, Alice, let me grab this.
Yeah, I think there's something important about actually being able to just go in and play, because I've had a similar, exactly the same thing. Sitting on a train for 3 hours, and they moved me later and later and later until I was the last audition. I actually rang them. I said, I'm 5 minutes away. They held the panel back, and I had no choice but to literally run out of a taxi. I didn't even change my trainers. Like, I just went in straight away and played, and it actually went really well. But you just don't know what will happen. I mean, obviously try and make sure you're as well prepared travel wise, but sometimes things will go out of control, and you just sometimes have to just go in and do it. It's not ideal, but yeah, it's funny how we've both had similar kind of
Yeah.
it happens basically.
Well, and it happens in the concert world too. I mean,
Yeah.
what I've mostly done is play concerts, and you know, well, remember when we did that, when we played concerts? And sometimes you're just late and you have to play. So,
Yeah.
oh, sad face. I think we should probably wrap up unless anyone has any more burning questions. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to give my little plea here. If you found this interesting and inspiring, oh, look at Mark. He's got my I can just read this. Next week, we have another great class planned. We'll go back to regular repertoire. Pasha Saburi is an old friend of mine, actually studied with me briefly. He has an amazing studio of students in Austin, Texas, and we've got 4 performers lined up for that. I've set up a PayPal account to raise funds, if we can, to send to our guest teachers. I hope you're all well and safe and doing what you can. I know it's not always easy to practice in this kind of situation. I'm finding it very difficult. But hopefully things like this and whatever you're coming up with on your own are keeping you kind of going and interested. So thank you. Thank you, Helena.
Thank you so much to all the candidates. I mean, I was blown away. I had to say, the courage it takes to perform like that is, yeah, hats off to all of you. I totally understand how hard, and the performance standard was really quite superb. So thank you very much.
All right, so we'll end the meeting and end the live stream and see you next week.
Thank you, Cecily.
Bye.
Thank you.